And then I know it's like a little embarrassing because we're in the middle, like we're in public right now. Welcome everybody to the SciCommunity YouTube channel. Today I am here with Karelly Ramirez.
Hola.
And we're gonna take a couple of the questions that you all put into the SciCommunity Instagram and we'll do a little interview. So Karelly, what is your story? Who are you?
So my name is Karelly Ramirez and I was born and raised in Mexico. I've been studying in the US for about 2 years and maybe like a couple of months now. I started medical school when I lived in Mexico, but before throwing myself into the big commitment, I thought it would be fun to, try something different. And that's when I came upon Portland. I came here just to see, and I ended up staying actually, and I ended up actually changing career paths too. I started taking my general requirements, and as I saw more of like what chemistry actually is, I decided what I liked about the medical field was more so the chemistry that took part of it. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm an undergrad in chemistry. I'm probably gonna minor in physics too, which is a great passion of mine. And it's currently what I'm doing. I also have a nonprofit that's currently starting up called Girls Who Bond for women and girls in chemistry. And that's pretty much what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, how's that going, the Girls Who Bond thing? Like, how did that project start and then how is it going?
Well, it all started I was reading this book about women in Silicon Valley, and I was amazed at just the unity within that community, and it made me realize that I often don't see that when it comes to other women in chemistry. Like, I don't know a lot of women in chemistry, and the few that I know of are so far away from me. And I know they're out there, I just think we haven't been given that platform to communicate with each other. And I also think that I meet a lot of younger girls who, when I tell them I'm a chemist, they have this idea in their head of like, oh, you make drugs, or you're in the lab all day doing anything. People, it's like, oh, you're Walter White. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever you say. So I think that just being able to talk to people about what a chemist actually does and how we're involved so heavily in like our everyday lives, I just want to kind of like give the spotlight to that. And I think it's something that hasn't been explored. So I'm kind of I'm curious to see where that goes.
How's the response been from all the girls that have been involved with that project so far?
Honestly, it's been really nice. Like, I was surprised by the amount of people, even for like non-chemistry fields, that reached out to me and they were like, that's really cool and that's really awesome. And especially from girls that, they were reaching out to me and telling me they were really interested in the project, and they were like, but I'm an undergrad, or I'm doing this and I'm still in school. And I think that's the beauty of the project. Like, I'm an undergrad too, and we're all in this kind of together, and it's just about growing with each other rather than seeing this as like a level. It's just a community and a network opportunity.
Yeah, okay, and let's talk about the undergrad thing, because I think there's almost a theme on this platform. Like, there's a lot of people working on their PhDs, they're in grad school or whatever, and then Karelly, you're an undergrad. And I know like that stresses you out. So it's like, I'm
like the rookie of the community.
Well, I don't think anybody knows what we're doing in this spot. We're all just like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks, honestly. How do you feel that like you can still be a part of the community? Like, because we all welcome you, we all love you, but like, I know that stressed you out. What about being an undergrad makes you feel like your voice is less valued, or that it's valued in a different way?
I mean, I guess it's just the fact that I don't have, X or Y degree on my hands, or I don't have like X amount of research years in me to be able to fully tell someone like, hey, this is it. I've seen it on like a microscope. I perhaps don't have that experience just yet, but being able to talk with all of you who do have that experience, it just gives me so much advice and so much insight on what I actually should be doing. Because, there's a lot of people who I've been talking to and they're like, oh man, I spent like so many years doing this. Maybe you should do this differently. And instead of me taking like, 2 years to do something, it takes me like half of the amount of time. So it's just been almost like a mentorship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
like
sure.
I'm an undergrad and everything, but I've been learning through all of the people in the SciCommunity about what they do and about how I can like expand my audience and expand my knowledge. So it's been really nice.
Yeah.
I've come to terms with it, that it's more of an opportunity rather than a setback.
It is too. And I want to like, you are offering some, like, we like what you do, and that is why, like, that's why I think we're all involved in this. But at the same time, like, you do offer so much too. Like, you don't have to be in a master's program or anything. You can still just like do your thing, because now you're a mentor to like the younger girls too. Like, you don't have to be like in undergrad, you don't have to be on the level of like master's or PhD students. You can still get like the younger kids excited too.
And I'm kind of glad that you mentioned that. I'm just going to jump in because like I was talking to someone about this in the Chemical Society conference, that we were talking how often a lot of my content, I get a lot of messages from people in Latin America, which is where I'm originally from. And they just tell me, we don't have as many resources to, have all these textbooks or this information. And it's so good that you're putting it out there. And I think eventually that's what drives most of my research and my posts. Like I was in a situation back in Mexico where it's funny, I always tell my friends, now that I'm in the US, I buy so many science books, like memoirs and stuff. I never knew those existed. And I never knew you could be like a science journalist, because in my country, that's just not really an area of opportunity. So I'm hoping that with everything I do, people from other countries who would probably not have the access to that information right away or in the way they want, they're able to access that, because I think that's a huge like misconception of science. Like you have to go to a certain Ivy League, or you have to have this amount of things under your belt to be a scientist. But the truth is, science should be open for everyone, and that's what I'm hoping to do with the channel. Just bring people from all sorts of communities and backgrounds and just teach them something that might help them in their everyday life.
So you started out in med school, then you switched to chemistry.
Yes.
What's the attitude of people in Mexico towards chemistry and towards science? Because I know that like we've gotten some different feedback on that from people in different countries.
Well, I think it depends what generation you ask. For example, my friends are a little bit more open, and I have friends who are doing like engineering degrees. However, the number of women definitely that go in engineering is still very, very low, just because what we have a lot in Mexico too is like the social background history, and in Mexico there's not a lot of area of growth. So if your parents do something, that's what you're gonna do. So it's very difficult to branch out. So a lot of the times the people who get like the engineering jobs in the engineering companies are the males, because they're the sons and they're the ones who should be getting it.
According to some people.
According to our culture. It's just when I went to medical school, actually, like they first told me like, don't you want nutrition school? And I was like, I don't want nutrition, I want medical school. So it's really, nutrition school is for girls, medical school is more for guys. It's very weird to see a woman. We have way more women than we used to, but it's still like they treat you very differently. There was this big controversy in the public medical school that the teachers were more strict with the women than they were with the men. And if you went into a lab with maybe like your nails have polish on them, or you were wearing something, that perhaps didn't affect the lab in general, but they were just so finicky because you were a woman. So it definitely has taken quite a bit to adjust. The chemistry world in Mexico is so industrial that when I tell people like what I'm doing, like I'm doing communication and all of this, they don't really understand what that is, because there's no market for it over there. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. If we were only to do things that made us money, I don't know if anybody would be doing science communication. We asked a couple people on the SciCommunity Instagram to send some questions for Karelly, and Teresa Ambrosio from Italy. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. I don't do a good Italian. Ambrosio. Okay. What is your advice for kids who want to start undergrad in chemistry?
Honestly, I wish I had some like super deep thought about how it's going to be how cool chemistry is. It's just take a class, just take one, like at least try, because I think that's what happens most of the times. Kids often and people just have this misconception of like high school chemistry, like periodic table and just like hydrogen and oxygen and you do bonds, and it's so boring, right? And then we have the people who think it's like Breaking Bad all over. So just take the class and really try getting invested. Like chemistry is so broad. So just maybe pick something that's your favorite thing. Like for example, with me is I talk a lot about like sunscreen and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't put so much thought into the actual chemistry that goes behind so many of those everyday products. So I think just like giving a thought of something you do in the day, picking out one thing and trying to go beyond what that really is. But just try out a class that interests you, or as I said, pick a product and go online and research about it so you can understand how much of a field chemistry is. And
you mentioned like sunscreen and stuff. I know that you have a lot of interest in like cosmetics and applying chemistry concepts to cosmetics.
Yes.
And that's been kind of like your thing. How did that start?
That started because I had never worn makeup until I came to the US. And then I started wearing makeup and I started getting like a lot of skin issues. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And I started seeing doctors and I started doing this. And then I started reading a lot of articles about, you know, like cosmetic products. And even when I followed those things, it didn't really work. And then I was like, okay, so you were doing chemistry and there's got to be something in here that you could potentially understand. So I tried doing more research and I actually realized that, you know, it's not a one size fits all. And that's always something that I've tried to like portray kind of in my channel, because I do say like, oh, I like using this and I like using that. But I mean, it's all like a trial and error. You know what I mean? Because that's what my channel is about. I try, for example, some weeks I'm great and I'm doing amazing. And then I try another product and it doesn't work for me. So it's just about applying basic chemistry concepts. Like, as I said, I've done like emulsion videos, which is like, you know, washing your face. So it's just like that basic one. And then once you have that understanding that you know, you must wash your face, you go to the next step, which is understanding what type of chemicals work best for you and what you can pick and choose from. So it's just kind of like a multifaceted process. But I think there's some basics there that everyone could really like jump into.
For sure.
And as I said, it's just, I think for me, it highlights how broad the field is, that just something as easy as, and especially right now, it really like irks me. It's one of my things that, you know, marketing right now is such a high demand, how would you call it, like
it's a high demand field?
Yeah, I guess like it's just like there's so many companies out there who are giving out like false advertisement.
Yeah, okay, misinformation.
Misinformation to a lot of the consumers. And I think that strays away people from chemistry, because, you know, they're told like, oh no, everything must be organic, everything must be green, zero chemicals, that's bad for you. When in reality, we all need all these things. And if it wasn't for chemistry itself, in my own opinion, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, it's more to just give the general knowledge of what's actually going on.
Yeah. And now that's awesome. Like seeing chemistry and seeing science applied to like everyday things, like the products that you wear, like the things that you put on your body all the time, for sure. Like, I feel like that's a really good way to get people interested and inspired by like, oh, this is day-to-day science. It's not just a one class that you've taken kind of a thing. You have the explaining cosmetics, and then you're trying to get more girls into chemistry. Are those exclusive, or are those like tied together in some way?
I think the reason why they could be tied together is because, you know, for a long time, the cosmetic industry is something that has been targeted towards women.
Of course.
So yeah. I think that being able to pick up on that and just give women that information, because we have so many, you know, social media, we have ads, we have everything that's a heavily woman targeted. And I think that as a woman, I just want to make sure that like all my girls out there are like, have that basic understanding of like, okay, this is what they're telling us, this is what we should be understanding, just because I feel like it's the fair thing to do. As I said, just because I see younger generations and they're being so bombarded by all of these products and all of these things, like, you need to do this to look pretty, you need to do this to look this way. And it's just kind of, it's very stressful for me, because you should be able to pick what works best for you and what you like the most, not what someone else is telling you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like, this sounds like so punk rock in a way. It's just like, I'm empowering people through chemistry and like through the knowledge of science to make better consumer choices. But at the same time, like, stick it to the man.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Good. So part of that question was also, do you feel like it's necessary to use kind of like more feminine things that are targeted towards women to get younger girls interested in chemistry? Like, is chemistry interesting enough on its own, and are you going to get girls interested based on just like how cool applications of it are? Or do you need to use things that are more girly to get girls into it?
I think premise number one, chemistry is super cool by its own.
Yeah.
However, I think that for a long, long time, one of the mistakes, in my opinion, that science has made is science wants everyone to come their way. And I think we've done the whole like meet halfway thing, and it doesn't work. So I think we have to take the step further and be like, okay, really though, what do we have to do to get people interested? And for me, I don't think that makeup exclusively is the only thing that's going to get girls into science. However, I've noticed such a good response towards it that it's what I'm inclined to do.
Sure.
Especially because of my background, you know, I come from Mexico, and our cultures are very like feminine oriented, and that's just the way we're brought up. And I've noticed, at least I do a lot of the things I do based on my nieces. And, you know, they're the type of, you know, I would talk to them about medical school even, and they were like, ew, like, no, that's, you know, you're wearing like this and it's dirty. And I feel like once I was able to include some things that they found more girly, they were more prone to talk to me about it. So I don't think it's exclusive or that it should be like, oh, you know, we have to be this way. I just think it definitely, for me, it's not closing it out, it's just more opening the...
Right. It's not like saying, oh.
It's like opening a door, you know, like if you feel like you're this way, you can come in. If you feel like you're this way, you can come in. It's not letting anyone out. It's just, you know, expanding it.
Okay. Am I right to say that, like, when you're using cosmetics to explain chemistry, it's not saying like, oh, the only way to get girls interested is if we explain like what's behind makeup, but more like, hey, if you're interested in this stuff, then you might also learning about how it works.
Exactly. And I think, as I said, the one reason why I also do cosmetics at the moment is just because it's something so heavy in our society right now, like the whole, you know, just branding and ads and products and, you know, even vitamins and stuff. So it's just, I'm trying to pick kind of like the trends that are going on at the moment and going from there. Okay. But I'm not like saying that it's exclusive just for girls.
Question from the audience. How do you manage time?
I am like a habit freak. I mentioned in my Instagram, I have anxiety. So for me, having like a planner and having a set kind of like just blocks of time that I know will always happen every week is very soothing for me. So I have certain things I do every day, like, you know, wake up at a certain time, have coffee, and at least get 30 minutes of work or something done. Get my workouts in. But I think I was telling this to Patrick, like, how do you manage that time between like phone and not phone and just like spacing out? But I think just mainly making blocks of times, keeping a planner, and keeping yourself accountable of this. Like, if you have a list, you have to do the list. So usually when I fall like off the wagon, I'll usually tell my roommate or someone, like a friend of mine, and I'll be like, listen, I have these things that I need to do and I haven't been doing them. So they'll keep me accountable for that.
You mentioned it a little bit, but mental health stuff.
Yeah. What about it? I'm all for that.
Nobody's management is exactly the same. Like nobody deals with it exactly the same. I guess how has your journey with mental health evolved, and how has it impacted you as somebody in science?
I think that the way it has impacted me as someone in science is I usually struggle a lot with school, like a lot. It's very hard for me sometimes to be, because I don't know how I'm gonna wake up some days. So some days, you know, especially when like there's a medication change or a dosage change, I might wake up feeling really groggy, or I cannot concentrate. So just always keeping like a good communication with your teachers and what you're doing. That's where the organization comes in, you know. I have to have this planner or what calendar or whatever you want to call it, just because I know that I'm not a very consistent person when it comes sometimes to like how I feel on a daily basis. So I have to like always prepare myself for those situations. But I think that as a scientist, it has impacted me very just greatly. Is that how you say it?
Sure.
Okay, very greatly in how I study. And it's just made school a little bit harder for me, but not impossible. And that's why I've always tried to focus on like, you know what, yeah, I might not be the perfect student, but I'm a great scientist overall, you know, because I do engagement and I do this and I understand. So never feel pressured, you know, about like grades or anything like that. It's something that I was talking to Patrick to yesterday. You know, my anxiety has taken me to like fail several classes and just having to retake them, and it sucks. And you know, I'm sure that a lot of people are like, oh, science majors should not fail these classes.
High expectations.
But it's like, hey, life happens, you know, and you're not gonna give up on something you love, which is your passion, just because you couldn't manage to get a certain grade. That's just, then if you do that, then it wasn't really a passion of yours. So I just keeping track of that. And when it comes to me as a person, it was really hard growing up with it, because in Mexico it's a big taboo. So I couldn't really get any help until I moved to the States. So it's been a recent thing that I've started, you know, like taking medication and just dealing with it a different way, but still managed very differently where I come from. So it's kind of hard to, you know, balance both Mexico Karelly and US Karelly, because it's almost like they're two different people. So
how's living in Portland? How is Portland State and all that?
I love it. It's great. Everyone should move here. Portland should pay me for doing this, that. No, but really, I've loved it so far. As I was telling Patrick yesterday, you know, I grew up in a city in Mexico, but the way everything is structured, it's almost like you still live in a little town. Everyone knows everything about you. So just for me, coming to a place that was so liberal and just like so open was just like a whole, it's like if I went to like 30 countries in one, you know, there's just so much diversity here that I'm able to have so many opportunities. But I think it's definitely been like a hard adjusting to life in the US. As someone who all my life grew up in Mexico, you know, with a different culture and with a different background, I definitely had those like cultural shocks that you say at the moment, especially when there's such like a big Hispanic community over here too. Because I was explaining to Patrick that I think one of the misunderstandings that we have is like it's difficult because we're so similar yet we're so different, and it's kind of like almost stressful because you're like, oh man, we share the same things and we're united by this one amazing thing that's we're both, you know, have Mexican culture and Hispanic in us, but at the same time we just led such different lives. But it's been good so far. I love it. I really think that it has opened my thoughts in so many ways, thinking about, you know, before it was only like I could see only through the Mexican, you know, lens, like, oh, you know, my community and this and that, but now I'm better able to understand needs of other people. For sure. And it also helped me like understand how to help my own community. For example, like I always give this example, and if you're an international student or you know your native is not English, you can use this with your teacher. When I first moved here, I struggled a lot in school because a lot of the times I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't know how to be so technical in English. And I was getting so grades because my teachers were like, oh, you know, this is good, but it can be better. And I told them, like, listen, I know this, it's in my head, I understand it, but I don't know how to translate that at the moment. And I talked with my teachers and they were like, why don't you just do graphics? Why don't you show me pictures? Show me graphs. And I was like, that's such a good thing to do. And I think, you know, as a non-native speaker, you just entering the science world in the US has been very difficult to adjust to. But I think it has shown me that there's so much other tools that we can use, like graphics and visuals, and going on all these social media to like talk how we want to talk. You know, we don't have to be so technical on social media, which is why I love. So yeah, just kind of like learning how to adapt to a different situation.
Yeah. What keeps you going? Because like, I know that if I were to try to, that's a huge undertaking, like getting a degree in a non-native language. What keeps you going? Like what keeps you motivated to finish this thing out?
I think that what keeps me going is just, I've always been like, I don't want to call myself like a fighter, but I've always liked to take on a challenge. Okay. And I think that first it was a challenge when people were like, oh, you know, you're a girl and you're going to medical school. And I'm like, no, done, cross it off. And now it's like, it's hard for me to like, it's definitely hard to do a degree in like not your native language, but I want to show people that you can, and that it's, you know, you can do so much more than that. And because I feel that, as we talked yesterday, like people have this one-sided perspective of what a scientist is and what a scientist should do. And I just want to show everyone, like, no, there's so much more to a person. Like, even if you're not a scientist, you know, there's so much more to a person, to who they are, that you just need to, you just need to like kind of show that. So what keeps me going is definitely, also it's going to sound very patriotic. Okay. Patriotic. So, but like just also living here in the States, you know, when there's all this kind of like political climate going on, I think that being able to tell people that I'm, you know, a Mexican born and raised student who's actually doing great, I hope so, and just kind of giving my name, my country a good name. And showing that, you know, as Mexicans, we're able to do just what about anyone else can do, and that we're here to help and we're here to learn. So I just want to be able to give a good representation to Mexico too. Awesome.
I think that's a huge deal because like, even if, oh gosh, like so much of science communication is representation too. Like we all grew up, I think, with just white men as our vision of a scientist. And so now that like we have way more representation, now it makes it so that like, you know, my junior high age students can look up and say like, oh, there are so many people represented that like, yeah, our view of what a scientist is changing. And I think that's so good. So you have another year and a half, is that right, before you graduate?
Yes, about a year and a half.
Cool. What are plans afterwards?
I think just getting more involved with the nonprofit, it's something I'm really passionate about, and I've seen like a very good response from it. And I think I underestimated how much work a nonprofit needs, because it all started with me getting super hyped, and I was like, yes, I can do this. I'll just make an Instagram. And then when I noticed people actually turning to me and saying like, no, this could actually work, it was like, holy crap, like, okay, let's sit down, let's take a breather, and let's plan this out. So I think that for me, after finishing school, definitely kind of like reevaluating where I'm at. I don't have any like solid plans, because I think it's not really like a line, it's more like a little,
dude, it's all over the place.
Every day is something different for me, so it's one of those things where I don't have anything set in stone, other than I know that I want Girls Who Bond to be a thing, and I want to keep doing science communication for sure. I want to be making more videos. I want to be, Patrick was encouraging me and supporting me to expand in Spanish, which is something that I'm really looking forward to, because I was just telling him that it is true, we don't really have a lot of representation in Latin America of like scientists, because it's so industrial, everything we do, so it would be a really nice area to kind of like expand to.
I think for anybody who is getting into science communication, like I think what we were talking about last night was there are so many YouTube channels and Instagram accounts that are doing really amazing science communication, but it makes it harder to find a niche or to find a branch for yourself. And so like we're throwing around ideas like maybe Karelly could, instead of having like a cosmetic based chemistry channel, what if she were to do like the sickest like Spanish language chemistry channel? That way, like, because again, like how much work is it to try to understand something and to do captions which aren't perfect, and again they're really technical. Like what if she were to do the best like Spanish language chemistry channel? So please leave her encouraging comments that tell her to do this thing.
Or any feedback.
Yes.
I'm super welcoming of all of that,
Cool. That being said, how can people keep in touch with you? Like what social medias do you want to plug and all that?
So you can follow me on Instagram. My handle, I'll probably tell Patrick to leave it down below, but it's at Karelly RG. I also have the page for Girls Who Bond there, and I'll be releasing the website soon enough. All my other social media are in my Instagram bio. You can feel free to send me a direct message. I'm usually pretty good at that, but sometimes I get busy or I get distracted really easily. So just give me some time to reply, but anything you have to tell me, I'm always open. And I hope you enjoyed this video.
Cool. And we'll have links to all that down in the description. There should be a subscribe button for the SciCommunity YouTube channel and Karelly's channel somewhere around here. If not, it'll be down in the description. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like the video, leave some positive comments, subscribe to the SciCommunity YouTube channel. Bye.
Adios.
All right. Sick.